Okay, guys, we are now into page 16 in our journals, or it should be page 16, Algebraic Proportions. So if you remember last year what a proportion is, it's a comparison of two ratios, and the ratios have to be equal. So again, we are able to check our answers, which makes this unit awesome. Let me see if we can see everything there. All right. Okay, so we're going to go over steps of how to solve this. It's a step-by-step process. So if you get lost in your homework, you don't know how to do it, go back to your journal. So step one in how to solve an algebraic proportion is cross-multiply. This is not the same as cross-reducing. Remember, we cross-reduce when multiplying fractions. But now we have this equality, so now we cross-multiply. And what that looks like is if you have a fraction a over b equals c over d, then I can cross-multiply to where AD is equal to C over D. And we'll talk about what that means in a second. Now, after we cross-multiply, we distribute if needed. And then step 3 is we solve it. And what is step 4? Check it. Okay, so write those down for your notes. And then if we look at number 1, a lot of you are probably saying, well, I know number 1. And you can immediately do it in your head and you come up with the number 8. And that's valid. That is a valid way of thinking. So what we were taught in last year and in elementary school when we did proportions and ratios and we're comparing them is that you look at what your numerator, your denominators are doing. If I go from 3 to 6, I'm multiplying by 2. And whatever I do to the denominator, I do to the numerator. So 4 times 2, and I can get x equals 8. And that is absolutely true. But the more complicated our algebra becomes with binomials and trinomials, the less this process makes sense. So what I want to encourage you to start now is cross-multiply. So we know that x equals 8, but watch when I cross-multiply. I can cross-multiply 3 times x to get me 3x, and I set that equal to the extremes. These are called the extremes of a fraction, the top left and the bottom right. Those are the extremes. And these are called my means because they're smack dab in the middle. So that's just terminology that we throw out there that you may not understand. So these are the extremes and these are the means. So I multiply my means and I get 3x, and I set that equal to 4 times 6, which is 24. And now I don't need to distribute. Step 2, I don't need to distribute, but step 3, I solve. And I get x equals 8, which is the same answer we got up here. So how do we check our answer? We plug 8 back in, and I look and I see, does 8/6 reduce to 4/3? 2 goes into 8 4 times, 2 goes into 6 3 times, and it does. So those rates check out. So I know that x equals 8. So let's go over here, go down here to number 3. It's not so easy to look at a pattern. How are they getting from 2 to 5? So 1, that's probably not the best method so far, but also you've got these variables up here in both sides. So when you see a binomial, more than one term, what I want you to do is put parentheses around that immediately before you even start solving. Why? Because that tells the reader you've got to be doing distributive property. So watch what that means. When I multiply my extremes together, I am multiplying 5 times y minus 3. And I'm setting that equal to the means, which is 2 times y, which is 2y. So now that was step 1, multiply, cross-multiply. And now step 2 is distribute. So I get 5y minus 15 equals 2y. And my goal is always to move my variable term to the left, so I'm going to do that by subtracting 2y. And I get 3y minus 15 equals, students freak out here, and they're like, oh, what do I do? There's not a number. Well, remember, 0 is still a rational number. It's still an integer. It's still a whole number. So it's still a valid number here. And then I'm going to add 15 to both sides. I'm going to go over here because I don't have room. So I get 3y equals 15. Divide both sides by 3, and y equals 5. And of course, I can check my answer real quick. I'm not saying to go back in and evaluate. I'm saying a quick check is always good. So 5 minus 3 is 2. 2 over 2 is 1. Y is 5. 5 over 5 reduces to 1, so it checks out. So I know that I have the right answer there. Let's do a couple more on the proportions on the next page. Let's try and go to the, really, they can't stay complicated, but I want to kind of keep these videos short. So the first thing I'm going to do, remember this is a step-by-step process, is when I look at this problem, I'm immediately going to put parentheses around my binomials. That's the number one thing I do. And now my first step is to cross-multiply my extremes. So I'm going to multiply 2 times 4u plus 9. And I'm going to set that equal to my means, which is 3 times 3u plus 7. So I want to make sure that everybody knows how to set these up. All right. And now I multiply 8u plus 18 equals 9u plus 21. Subtract 9u, subtract 9u. Negative u plus 18 equals 21. Subtract 18, subtract 18. Negative u equals 3, and then u equals negative 3. Okay? So that's how I'm solving. If you need help or need questions, just come into tutoring. Good luck.